Hey everybody, how's it going out there? Hey, well, I've got a convention to go to in a few weeks. Anthrocon 2017, who's going to be there? For the last time. For the last time that Anthrocon will be able to call itself the largest furry convention in the world. Probably. It's going to be a historic convention. Sure. But other than that, I'm going to be there for different reasons. I'm going to be doing one panel there this year. My first panel at Anthrocon. I've done panels at other conventions. I've done panels at Furthermore. I've done panels at Midwest Fur Fest. So it's not my first pony and rodeo show, but it's my first one at the big dog. But then again, Midwest Fur Fest is pretty large too. Actually, it's going to be probably larger than Anthrocon this year. I don't have any panels lined up for there, but I'm certainly going to be at Midwest Fur Fest 2017. And I'm certainly going to be attending the closing ceremonies. And I may or may not have an article pre-written for Flare before I even get on the plane about the event that might happen when they announce the number of people. And I'll just leave a little blank space in the number position. So that's kind of a little pro tip for people who write current events. If you could predict events, you could kind of write ahead of time. People in sports do that all the time. And by the way, for more information, you could go to the nonfiction writing panel, which I will be covering at Anthrocon this year. And I'll probably tell you the same thing I'm telling you right now, which is like you could pre-write events based on like the two inevitable outcomes. Like, so if you have a Super Bowl or something, you're going to have one team versus another team, and then you know one of those teams is going to win, so you write two articles, one where one team wins, one where the other team wins, and then you kind of leave blank spaces for like the quarterback names. It's kind of like a Mad Libs. You leave blank spaces for the quarterback names, you leave blank spaces for the scores. And of course you improvise a little bit. You can go and rewrite some of the stuff if something amazing happens, you can like insert the cool events that happened during the game at the time. So similarly, I could make pre-write a thing on that, but that's not the topic I had here, and the panels and stuff like that. But let's get on to an overall topic, which Majira Strawberry covered his convention horror story, and you can go to see his video about his convention horror story about trying to attend Midwest Fur Fest before he was the age of 21, and the interesting problems that arose from that, up in the description above. So I thought, that's a great idea. Let me talk about my convention horror story before I go to a convention, because that's a good idea. That's a great idea. That'll get you pumped for the convention. It's like, remember, it cannot be as bad as that one, right? Right. No. It could be. But and then I'll have another story to tell you after the convention if that happens. So at least there'll be that. So the worst convention I went to was, and here's the irony part. The horror story and the worst convention I attended are actually not the same convention because of different reasons. The worst convention I ever attended was my second convention attended. Because I attended, my first convention attended was Anthrocon 2011. And I went with somebody. And that person that I went with, the funny thing is, like, even though I wasn't very highly interactive with the fandom and all that, and I was just kind of observing things and kind of wandering about a little bit, at least I had somebody to talk to about, like, the different things that I understood about the culture through, the internet. So I could tell who this person was. There's this person does this person, hey, that's Kage, this is who they are. I could basically be like the what they call the exposition dump to the person next to me who attended the convention with me. So I had a sense of purpose. My sense of purpose was, teaching the other person who was with me more about the convention. And that's probably going to happen with this convention too. But the funny thing is that after that I had the post-con depression. So I was like, oh man, I gotta go to the next convention right away. So instantly I signed up for Midwest Fur Fest 2011. The problem was I didn't have anyone to go with this time. I had my own room, because I have more money than brains sometimes. And I had my own room, and I attended the convention myself, and it was horrid. And I say that because it's like, have you ever you're in a city, like if you've ever lived in a city, sometimes you could feel like you're kind of alone together, kind of a sense. And that was sort of the way I kind of felt too. I knew some of the people there, but I didn't know them enough to really like feel up to asking them. It's like, hey, you want to go out to dinner or do anything like that? And plus, I hadn't have that kind of confidence back then. I didn't have a job yet that trained me in confidence. So very much timid, shy individual, wandering about, hung out in the gaming room for a long period of time. But I could do that at home, and that's my entire thought of that entire convention as a whole for MFF 2011 was I could have stayed home and gotten more done in social interaction on the internets than I'm doing here. And that's kind of sad. And so I didn't feel like I made any progress in socializing or engaging with people in that year. And so I felt the entire convention was a waste of finance, a waste of money, a waste of time. And it's forgettable. Ultimately, the convention was forgettable. And that's kind of the worst for me, is something that has of no note, something that no progress, personal progress is made. So that's my worst convention experience, which is very much in juxtaposition of, Majira Strawberry's first one, which was Midwest Fur Fest 2014, I think he said it was. Or was it 2013? It had to have been 2013, because he didn't mention the gas thing. Because that would have been a thing in that story, or at least it should have been. If it was, that was your first convention, dude. That's a rough ride. But my horror story actually comes from, I think, the convention after that I attended, which was Anthrocon 2012. So that convention horror story is like, so at the time I didn't have a fursuit. I got this fursuit around late 2012, early 2013. But the person I went with, which was the same person I went with last time, had their suit, and they created a suit for themselves, and that same person created this suit. Of course, I'm not going to say who they are because they distance themselves from the fandom, and that's very much their right. So the issue is what was I talking about? So they went in their Bobcat fursuit, and so we're leaving the hotel, which is the DoubleTree. Now the DoubleTree is several blocks from the main convention. You have to actually walk through the streets of Pittsburgh for a few blocks to get to the convention if you're at an outside hotel. One of the layout issues with the Pittsburgh convention is the hotels are pretty scattered, and so transporting yourself from one to the other can get kind of bothersome. Walking is a very good way to do it. If you're walking in fursuit, obviously people are going to see you, and it's cool and that's kind of the cool charm of it, is because it forces you into sort of an uncomfortable zone. If you're just like, I don't like fursuiting in public, well, you're going to have to if you want to walk from your DoubleTree all the way to the main convention hotel, and people are going to stop and want to take pictures on the way, and you kind of get comfortable with it, because I think that at that time the city, over time, they had since 2006, 2010, 2011, 2012. They're comfortable with it by now, so they're taking image pictures, and people are and it's jovial, and it's a nice attitude, it's a nice atmosphere. And as big as Midwest Fur Fest ever gets, it will never have that, because the place where Midwest Fur Fest takes place is sort of a tourist zone. So the residents or the people in the area don't get that ingrained into the culture of it, because they're tourists. Such as the furries are tourists as well, so there's sort of a disconnect, and the hotels are also better connected with one another, so you don't have to really walk the streets as much. So there's not really much opportunity to interact with normal citizens as is with Anthrocon. But that being set aside, basically I walk down. So I'm their spotter in essence. I'm the person watching over them to make sure that they're the ones that are going to be okay. Watch out for any things, any problems, any issues. Act as their spotter. As far as what they call their furry spotter, is a person who's out of suit, who basically watches out for a person who's in suit because of the vision impairment and all that stuff. All right? Long of the short, I'm not very good at my job. And no, don't worry, the fursuiter is fine. What I'm saying is that while I'm watching out for them, I'm not watching out for me, and that's a problem. So if you're a spotter, a furry spotter, the long of the short is make sure that you're walking in a safe spot too. Like make sure that you are not running into any issues with your normal walking and stuff like that. Because what happened was that they were doing some sidewalk construction behind the DoubleTree at the time, and there was some like road signs. And one of them had was just like one of those ones, they didn't drive it into the ground or anything. They just had like metal legs sticking out, and they had like sandbags on top of those metal legs to hold the sign down in place with a construction sign. And this was over this kind of fancy sidewalk that has like these little stones and everything on it. So I'm watching out for my fursuiter person. I turn around while watching them, and so I'm kind of walking sideways. So I'm not paying attention to the sidewalk or looking in front of where my feet are going, and what ends up happening is there's that little metal leg sticking out, and then I hit it with my foot in the wrong way, and I start falling over. And then, so I'm looking down, and I see this there's this fancy sidewalk down here. I don't want to hit it straight on. So at first I have my arms stretched out straight to catch myself, which is a bad idea for many of you if any of you are in physical activity and know that, that's a bad idea. Because you could break your arm doing that. So this is the bad position that I was in as I was starting to fall. But then I saw the sidewalk as I was falling, and I'm like, those stones are kind of like, it's kind of one of those fancy sidewalks with the stones and stuff like that, and they're kind of jagged, and it's like, and I'm thinking to myself, as I'm falling, it's like, if I hit that with my arm straight out, I'm going to slit my wrist on all those stones. So I've got to tuck and roll real quick. So I start doing the right thing, which is rolling a little bit into the fall and try not to hit my arm straight out into it. But I'd still hit hard. And so I hit hard like with my arm like that. So I still get gouges a bit on the fancy sidewalk on my wrist. And my elbow hits pretty hard. But I roll into it. I stand up pretty quick because the adrenaline's going at that point. And so arms sore a bit, but I can walk it off. So we keep walking down to the Weston, a few more blocks. And, I'm holding it out pretty well. It's like, okay, it's starting to hurt a bit. But I try to continue, engaging in the convention. I take Nuka's survey because it's like, okay, I needed something to do that's not very physical exertion. After that, I kind of go to the marsupial panel, or what it is, the marsupial meet and greet. And so they have like images of the people who attended the panel afterwards. And of course, I decided, okay, sure, why not go with it. So I'm a very tall dude, even without the fursuit. And so they wanted me up in front, and they wanted me kneeling down. And that was the most excruciating and long period of time in my life. I was sitting down there, I was kneeling down in front of the camera with my arm down. And literally the arm they wanted me, literally the only arm that we could really put down was the one that I had landed on. So I'm sitting there like that, and I'm I try to grin, I'm grinning and bearing it. And it's like, it felt like forever an eternity. I don't know how long it was probably only like 1 or 2 minutes, but it felt like a half hour. I was like sitting there putting my pressure on the arm that I had just landed on really hard, and it's like, oh my God, end it. Come on, take the goddamn photo. Say cheese. So eventually the photo was taken. I start noticing that I could not bend it fully. Like I can't bend my arm fully anymore. Like I can't bend it fully without like excruciating pain. So I go to the con ops, of course, like the con ops sort of medical suite sort of thing. So I go there, and obviously they're like, well, you can't fully bend it. It's like, well, I'm thinking your elbow might have a break in it, so you might want to go to the hospital. So I go, okay. So I get into a taxi, drive across the bridge to the Allegheny Hospital, across the river, And so I spend about an hour there, not in like an emergency type of thing, but it's sort of like it was an emergency room. It was more like a hospital visit. They claimed that I had fractured it. That turned out to be wrong over time, which is kind of my experience with hospitals. They'll kind of over-exaggerate what happened, and then that's another story for another time. But I get lucky, okay? That's the long and the short of it. It was really just a bad internal bruise. Like, it was so bad that, like, it was black and blue deep within the elbow. And when eventually, like, I went home after the convention and like went to like, you know, this like SOS place or whatever it's called, like a sort of a, you know, medical place that deals with bone and sports injuries. And like eventually, like the black and blue kind of rose to the surface, and it was kind of this ugly like black and blue armband across the elbow, like whoa, like ooh, that's ugly. It was kind of funny too, because I had my arm in a splint for the rest of the convention, and then like somebody outside the DoubleTree the next morning goes, "Oh man, that's commitment, man! You showed up at this convention with your arm with an injury like that." And I go, no, I got that here. that happened at this convention. That wasn't. I didn't go, "Oh yeah, I've got my arm in a splint. Dang it, I'm going anyway." Which I don't know, maybe I would, but I don't know if I would. But no, it's like, no, I got that here. You know, like, oh dang, what happened? It's like, bad. I was bad at being a spotter. Someone should have spotted the spotter. Literally, that's what should have happened. Other things happened at that convention too, which were a more personal thing, and it was just, it was not a good convention overall, but it was better than doing nothing or feeling like doing nothing, because at least then it's like, okay, I have an experience, I have a story to tell on a stupid YouTube video that people can watch, and then kick that like or kick a subscribe button or kick a comment in the comment section about what your worst attendance thing is, or what's your convention horror story that you want to share and scare everybody from going. Yes, that's what we'll do. Everyone, ooh, scary conventions, don't go. My room, I'll take your room if you don't go, so we're going to scare you. No, things happen, life happens, and you know, I survived it. And it's a lesson was learned. When you're spotting for fursuiters, you got to make sure you know where you're walking to. And that's all I gotta say about that. So thank you very much for watching. I'm getting the hop out of here, and you have yourself a very pleasant week.